All right, students, so this is a cow eyeball. Their eye is obviously quite a bit larger than ours, but it has all the same parts that we have, so it's nice to be able to look at it and identify some of the parts that you would see in your own eyeball. So you have a diagram labeled in your book. I want to just look at external parts first. So this is the front here. This is the cornea. If this had not been preserved, it would be clear because light is going to go through the cornea into the back of the eyeball. So normally this would be clear, but it's a little bit cloudy because it's been preserved. So this is clear, so light can go through, but it's also protective of the inside of the eye. Then all of this white stuff here around the eye, this is the sclera. It's also protective, but it's not transparent. You can't get light through that part. Now you've got a lot of fat around your eye for insulation and protection of the eye, and so you can see a lot of fat here. I tell my students in face-to-face class, as you get older, some of this fat slips down and ends up underneath your eye, which is sometimes what leads to bags under your eyes, is that extra fat is kind of moved down a little bit. So I want to look on the back side of the eye, and you can see there's a lot of fat. But if we look carefully here, this here is the optic nerve, and so this would be leading out the back of the eye and into the brain and taking visual information to the brain so that you would know what you saw. Okay, so let's cut it open and take a look at what we have inside. Usually the best thing to do is cut just a little bit behind the cornea, and that way we should be able to see everything. Now when I open this eye, the back part of the eye is full of a gelatinous material called vitreous humor, and it's a little bit jelly-like and squishy, so that might start to come out as we cut, just so you know what's happening here. So I'm just going to cut around, and then we're going to kind of have a front side and a back side so we can kind of see the whole thing from the inside. I think I'll leave it just a little bit attached, so I'm going to open this up. Okay, so, oops. So all of this jelly stuff, this is the vitreous humor, and you can see it's filling the back part of the eye, and that gives your eye shape because it's full of that vitreous humor. Okay, I'm going to have to move some of it out so that we can see the other parts. So we've got some vitreous humor here that's just squishing up against the front part of the eye. If we move some of this out, I'm going to pull this here. In the middle here, we have the lens. Okay, so you have a lens in your eye. The lens in your eye is pretty flexible. This one is a little bit hard because it's preserved. But remember, your lens, like the lens in your glasses, will change shape to help you focus. Okay, so I'm going to move the lens out, but you notice that it was located right here. So if light came through the front of the eye, it would go through the lens and then end up on the back part of the eye. So before we look at the back, let's look at the front here. So you can see, if I can get a little bit more of this vitreous humor out so we can see a little bit better. This dark part here is the iris. That's the colored part of your eye. On the back side of this cow eyeball, it's dark, but a lot of cows have brown eyes, so that's what would have the color. I'm going to hold this up a little bit maybe so you can see that there's a hole. Here's the iris. It's a muscle, and it basically controls the amount of light that come in. So the hole in the center here is the pupil. Okay, so that black that you see in the middle of your eye is actually an opening in the iris. And you notice this cow eyeball, it's kind of an oval or rectangular shape pupil, so that's a little bit different from humans who have a round pupil. Okay, so light comes in through the front, through the cornea. It travels through the pupil, the hole. It goes through the lens, and then it goes through the vitreous humor and ends up on the back side of the eyeball. So let's take a look at this back side, and again I'm going to try, actually let's see if we can move the vitreous humor without dislodging the retina. So the retina is the nervous tissue at the back of the eye that receives visual information. Okay, so if you kind of look at this, it looks kind of like just a little thin piece of tissue paper. Do you see how thin it is? That has all of your receptors for receiving visual information. And if you notice right here, let's see if I can find the spot where all of it comes together. There's a little circle right here. That's where all of those receptors come together, and they would travel out the back of the eye through the optic nerve. Okay, so in that spot where all those receptors come together, that would be your blind spot. There's no receptors right there because that's where the optic nerve leaves, and so that would be the location of the blind spot. And we do have an exercise for you to kind of look at your blind spot. Okay, so recognize this here, this thin tissue paper, as the retina, and then we're going to look at the back of the cow eyeball here. I'm going to move the retina. And so you can see that it's kind of shiny. This is called the tapetum lucidum, and this is something humans don't have. So we can't see real well at night, but cows can, and cats can, and dogs can. So you know, if you shine your car lights in the eyes of a deer or a dog, that they shine back, that's because they have this tapetum lucidum, which helps them to see better at night. So we have a retina on the back of our eye, but this back part here is not shiny. We don't have the tapetum lucidum. Okay, so all of those parts you have in your eye except for the tapetum lucidum. What I would like to do is take a look at a model just so that you can see it a little bit bigger. Okay, so here's an eye model. And you can see here in the front that it's clear. This would be the cornea, and then here's the sclera, the white part. We didn't really look at muscles, but your eyeballs move around, and so you have muscles attached to your eye so that your eyeballs can move around. So if we take this off so we can look on the inside, here we have the cornea, and behind the cornea, the colored part is the iris. And everybody has a little bit different color eyes. And then the hole in the middle is the pupil. And so light comes in, and then as it comes through there, it travels through the lens, through the vitreous humor, that jelly squishy like stuff in the eye, and then it leaves out the back through the optic nerve. And so all of this would be retina, but where all of those cells come together right here where the optic nerve leaves, this is what would be considered your blind spot. Okay, so retina on the back here, and you noticed in the cow eye we could move the retina. So if you've ever known somebody who had a detached retina, like this poor guy here, we've detached his retina, and that makes it very difficult to see, and so you have to have surgery to fix that. Okay, so make sure you can identify the cornea. The colored part is the iris. The opening is the pupil. Behind the pupil is the lens. Behind the lens is the vitreous humor, the jelly-like part. All of this is the retina. And where all of those cells come together to go back to the brain, this would be the optic nerve. Okay, so that gives you kind of an idea of what's going on inside of your eye, and we can see the parts here in pretty good detail because the cow eye is quite a bit larger than the human eye. All right, you guys, we're good.